I'm not going to go in because it says keep out and there's people around. It's just being actually worked. But I want to show you modern dredging operations. See, they've got a boat stored right there, but they're working all the gravels here along Anvil Creek, and you can see all the trommels and that sort of thing over there, and the big gravel piles that are being formed by the work they're doing here. So they're definitely still mining this area quite extensively. Arctic Gold Mining LLC, the mining operation here, as you can see. Lots of equipment here, and you can see the dredge piles out there. Another placer mine here, and you can see all the work they've done. They're chasing the ancient beaches back toward those foothills there, and you can see all the rock they've moved along the edge there. This is quite an operation as well. Very different from the underground mining or hard rock mining that most people are familiar with. I'm in the hills up above Nome right now, and I came up here because I wanted to show you from this perspective, because you can really see it clearly and quite well, all the ponds down there that are created by the dredging that took place and is still taking place here. All those bodies of water, of course not the ocean in the background, but all the bodies of water in the foregrounds were all created by dredging. And then the town itself, right there. Everywhere you look, you see these bodies of water created by the dredging. And that's a huge dredge out in the distance there. I'll zoom in on it. That's an absolutely enormous dredge. This fantastic dredge here is known as the Swanberg Dredge. And Alaska miner Walter Johnson acquired claims at this site, at Rocker Gulch is what it's called, in 1940. 6 years later, he and partner R. Pohl had this dredge built in San Francisco. It was then dismantled, shipped in pieces from Seattle, and reconstructed here. The dredge operated one season under the name Gold Beach Dredging Company, but it was not profitable. That was mostly due to the end of World War II and rising costs after that, because the dredge arrived here in 1946, which is when operations began. So their timing was not the best. A bank in Nome repossessed the dredge, I believe in 1947, and they tried to operate it for one summer in the mid-1950s, but that was not successful. And then Nelson Swanberg Jr., from whom this dredge gets its current name, purchased it in 1966, but it has never been operated since. Now, dredging is the big thing in this area. You'll hear me talk about dredging a lot. The town of Nome itself is just over to my left, not too far. And the whole history of dredging I should just mention somewhat quickly. After 1900, the miners concentrated on the area between the present beach, you know, the golden beaches that we've talked about, and the foothills off in that direction. In 1902, drift miners discovered a rich pay streak while hand-digging narrow shafts through the frozen tundra. It was an old beach line that they discovered, and it was a half-mile inland from the present shore. And that's why you see, the beach is behind me now, but that's why you see dredges like this out in the flatlands here, because they're tapping into older beaches. 2 years after the 1902 discovery, miners uncovered another beach line farther back toward the foothills there, and that was even richer. And so the gold recovery soared to almost $15 million in 1906 and 1907, and that was back when prices were much, much lower than they are now, of course. Drift mining, as we all know, if you've seen my other videos, is labor intensive and difficult, and so the use of large mechanical dredges began in 1899 in an effort to alleviate some of that great effort. However, the high cost of thawing the frozen ground, because this is all permafrost here, the high cost of thawing out the frozen ground with steam made dredging unprofitable in the early years. However, in 1917, it was discovered that cold water injection was an economical way to thaw the frozen ground, and this made the use of dredges feasible. In the 1920s, the Hammond Consolidated Goldfields Company built 3 huge dredges on the Seward Peninsula. Each could dig 60 feet below the surface and really get down into the depths of those ancient beaches. And during that time, the company recovered over $1 million in gold annually. And again, think about what prices were like back then. Crews working in front of the dredges would punch through the tundra with the thaw pipes in preparation for the dredging, and then the machines would follow behind them and work the gold out. And it's noteworthy as all the gold recovered in the Nome area during the 1920s and 1930s, 80% of it was recovered from dredges like this. Another view of the dredge here, and you can see the bucket ladder running down into the water right there. And the bucket ladder, of course, is driven by the winch room, or operated from the winch room, which is up there. And the buckets go up and they feed into a hopper that's located in that structure there. The hopper then feeds into a trommel, which sorts the rock from the finer gold-bearing sand and gravel. The material is then run through a sluice box, which traps the gold as the sands flush through. The fine sand and gravel drop out the lower area there, and the coarse tailings were driven out through the stacker conveyor, which is that structure you see there. Now, of course, this hasn't been operational in quite some time, so you don't see the tailings left behind anymore, but this dredging pond here was created by this machine in front of us. Another view of this great dredge here, and you can see the buckets running up into the dredge structure itself, and the dredging pond itself here.